Apologies for absence from Councillor Jack Lawman. Any other apologies? Minutes of the meeting held on the 23rd of September. Can I take that as a true record?
Agreed.
Any declarations of interest? Any questions on notice? No. Motions on notice? No. Right, so we'll go straight to item 7.
Thank you, Chairman. Good evening. This report provides an up-to-date position on the recommendations made by BDO, the Council's external auditors, in their report to this committee last September. Happy to take any questions.
Any questions? There was just one thing that I brought up, and that's on 7.3, financial statements, the update November 2015, and this will be fully implemented by December, and I believe that is correct, isn't it? Yes?
That is correct. I can confirm that action has actually now been taken. This was primarily relating to a grant income register. That's actually all now in place, with all external funding being recorded, grant income in terms of the actual source of the funding, the conditions associated to the funding, the actual codes to which it's attributed to, and the reporting requirements attributed to all funding is now recorded as well, so we're ensuring that we are on top of reporting deadlines as well.
Okay, lovely. And that comes up several times actually, where it's got where it says about December, but they're all being implemented now.
Yes, they are. The only area to note that is still work in progress will be the actual movement towards a earlier production of the financial accounts. I think we discussed actually having a working group in place to actually have a look at the steps that needed to be put into place in order to enable us to close early. That meeting is still is due to take place, I think, in the next week, etc., and then some of the outcomes to be reported back. I think the only thing to note is that in speaking to a number of other authorities about their position, many of them have found themselves in the same position of doing exactly the same exercise that we're proposing to do here.
Okay. You're all happy with that? Right, the recommendation. It is proposed that the committee resolves that the updates to the monitoring sheet for the BDO recommendations arising from the final report to the Audit Committee, audit for the year ending 31st March 2015, be noted. All agreed?
Agreed.
Item 8.
Thank you, Chairman. This report provides members with the outcome of our own self-assessment relating to compliance with the public sector internal audit standards. As a result of our current structure, we are less compliant than in prior years, although we believe our work is still carried out to the expected standards. The main body of the report identifies areas for improvement. Appendix 1 summarises the outcome of the self-assessment against a detailed questionnaire from SIPFA. And Appendix 2 is proposed revision to the audit charter to reflect the changes that have occurred in 2015-16. Any questions?
Shall we go through each page? Yes?
I've got an overall question.
Okay.
I just wondered if you had any knowledge about how other councils have fared with this self-assessment.
Very few councils have actually completed the full process in getting an external assessment. It's pretty fair to say most are hanging on as long as they can, because then the costs can be quite prohibitive on these.
Sorry, I didn't make myself clear. I wasn't talking about an external assessment.
That forms part of the overall. That's one of the areas where we're not compliant.
I understand that. But this is a self-assessment,
yep.
Isn't it? Have we had any feedback about how other councils have fared with this self-assessment? I mean, are we the only council written not to comply 100%, or are most of our fellow councils suffering?
I think everybody has a degree of non-compliance in some areas. Ours is more significant this year because of the structure.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Okay.
I can't seem to really, I might be wrong, perhaps Angela could confirm or deny, but I don't recall having all these reports passed through to us like this in the past. There just seems to be so many of them, all at once. And I can't remember ever coming to a meeting where I've got, 40 odd pages, 50 pages of reports to go through. Is there, why is this happening this year? Is it purely a one-off on an ongoing basis?
This particular report was to the Audit Committee in September 2014, and it was of a similar size.
Yeah, but we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 reports now of similar size. I can't ever remember that we had that many. We might have 1, perhaps 2, but suddenly we seem to have 5. Is there any reason for this? Is it just timing, or?
Pretty much in line with the work plan that was agreed in March.
Yeah, I think we have, David. We have had.
The one thing, sorry, Chairman, my report is late because it was due to come to September's meeting and it had to be deferred because there was still work to be done. So that's one reason why you have an extra one this time.
Yeah. Just seems quite, so much of it. I can't remember facing this much before.
Do you want to go through it page by page, or are you happy with the report?
Is there any areas that should be highlighted to us on this?
Yes, there is.
Yes.
So I talk
Yeah.
through to that. So
Yeah.
I think the area that I think possibly needs to be brought to your attention is page 8.3, and it's item 5.2, which sort of outlines in a few bullet points the key areas where we have failed to meet the standard and the ones that we felt need to be brought to your attention. There are 4 key bullet points. One that relates to the change in the management structure and the fact that we no longer have a senior qualified officer. The other relating to where within the structure audit resides. The third being around the formal audit for culture and ethics, and the external review has not yet been completed. Generally what would happen with this assessment is that the Section 151 officer would actually review these, the non-compliant areas, and make a decision as to whether or not I felt I was comfortably assured or had any concerns with the findings. The first area gives me cause for concern, not in isolation, because in instances where there is no senior qualified officer, that can still be deemed acceptable if you have sufficient resources within the team itself to have segregation of duties. My own review and assessment indicates that isn't the case, that the team is too lean to enable us to both have segregation of duties and an appropriate quality assurance. So those two combined give me cause concern, and that we need to do an urgent review of the internal audit function. What we're recommending here, purely for expediency, is that we do a very quick peer review, and I'm proposing that I pull back from some resources that I have accounted to do a peer review for us of our internal audit function. Want to look at the internal audit plan for next year and the areas that we should be focusing on, also to actually have a look at how we could get the right level of quality assurance, and also to actually think a little bit about the number of audit days and areas being covered and come up with some recommendations for us.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I suppose the question is going to be, as it's urgent and it's quite serious, At this point, what options do we have to improve the matter? Through you, Jim.
Well, I believe Denise has said that hopefully we're going to get somebody down from county.
Yes, I think
Because we've spoken about this over the last two audit meetings, that we feel that they are completely understaffed.
Well, I understand the point, but when you say get someone down from county, what does that really mean? Does that mean
Well,
we have to create a new position and appoint someone, or do we have options to do something else?
This is what the review will tell us in terms of what are the options available. If I sort of just give a quick outline of some of the areas of which I feel that would give me a bit of cause concern and me not being assured that we have specific in-house skills. One of the areas that Jim and I have spoken about is cyber fraud, for example. That's not on our audit plan. That would in occasion require a specialist function. So what we want to understand is, what are others doing about this? Is this an area that we should be looking at? How do we get that specialist resource, etc.? How do we quality assure? What are the areas that we don't know that we're missing, sort of thing? And we're hoping to get a very quick, short, sharp overview and a report on that, and then make a decision in terms of, do we then need to bring in some additional resources? Is it a specialist resource we need? And then sort of how do we get the relevant support?
I think if I can just say how it was explained to us, because we had a pre-meeting and we've covered this, is that at this stage, if we have a peer review and we take advantage of Essex County Council to do that peer review, because Denise is in the position to allow that to happen, and then we will know then that will be cost-free. We will then know what it is we need to put our efforts into and where our difficulties will be. So then we will have to have another plan, but at least it will give us an idea, and that is the best way to get an idea quickly. I think that's explained.
Yes, it's best to get an idea quickly of what we need to do, and then we can then agree how we take it forward.
David?
Yeah, my original, or my first reaction when I read this report was that it was a one-off resulting from the restructuring. But then when I read it again, I thought, no, it's not. And then when I've heard you this evening, I'm convinced it's not. So it is something that's going to have to be addressed in the long term.
Yes, we do.
And Essex County, borrowing, as it were, from Essex County Council.
I'm sorry?
Borrowing from Essex
No,
County
it's
Council.
really just about, at the moment, well, we're limited by our own expertise. So I'm limited by my knowledge and by Jim's on. So I'm reviewing and saying, actually, I think we need to be looking at cyber fraud, we need to be looking at these areas. But actually what I want to have is a specialist in this area telling us the areas that we should be focusing on and we should be looking at. And then also, similarly, how do we get the quality assurance, or the appropriate level of quality assurance. So at the moment, we're utilising my resource to do some of the quality assurance work as well, and reviewing the outputs from the audits. But actually we need to have something in place that gives us the right structure going forward, or provides that service going forward that's built into the structure. So that may be an additional resource. There could be a range of options for how that is delivered. It could be a replacement of that role, but there could be other options. But my concern is in just replacing that role, it wouldn't address some of the specialist issues that I've just discussed, where quite often you need to actually bring in specialist IT auditors to be able to outline what processes you need to have in place to prevent things like, say, cyber fraud.
If I come back on this, Chairman, you've mentioned cyber fraud, that's obviously very important. But it's not the whole story, is it?
No, there's other areas. I was just using that as an example.
Yeah, I mean, that in fact can be effectively be sort of brought in on a temporary basis to set something up. But what we're actually looking at, if I'm understanding you correctly, is that we are short-staffed.
It's
And that can't be long-term in an audit department. You might get away with it in one or two other departments, but not in audit.
No, we we need to either have someone who's able to do the right level of quality assurance, or we need to have greater resources to be in a position to have sufficient segregation of duties in the officers performing the audits. I think those are the keys, but we also want to have appropriate development of the team as well, appropriate supervision as well from other experts in the field, understand where where best practices and how things are changing, etc. So it's really about ensuring that we have a audit function that gives the resilience that we need, and the actual structure that we need going forward.
But I think you're also saying that we need more staff.
We do.
We do.
Is something being done about that? Is that being addressed?
But we need to be clear on where and how, and that's what we're hoping this peer review will cover.
Yeah.
Which is the best approach in tackling this.
Can I ask what the timescale is on this? Because we highlighted this issue, what we thought was where we were going to be exposed several months ago,
At least 6 months
at
ago.
least 6
yeah.
months ago, and we seem to have made no progress in 6 months. So what is the timescale for rectifying the situation as you've outlined now? I mean, are we talking another 6 months, or?
No, I'm hoping it's not going to be.
No, we're hoping it's not. We want to have a peer review done as quickly as possible. We wanted to bring that recommendation to yourselves. We want to put something in place to have a peer review. The report from that needs to come back to this committee. We don't want to ideally wait for the next committee. So what we're proposing is that we're able to actually share that with the chair and the vice chair, and if we're able to delegate authority, then to act based on the recommendations in that report, and then to be able to take that forward.
No.
I think
Sorry,
Robin
who-
indicated, so
Oh, sorry,
Thank
Robin, I couldn't see.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm not happy with what Denise has recommended. I support that. But as a council, are we happy with what would be an outsider looking at our internal audit? I feel a little bit uneasy about that, I have to say.
I don't think we've got an option.
Well, I feel you're right,
No.
Madam Chairman.
I don't think we have got an option.
I do have a question, Chairman, if I may.
Yeah.
We have a particular role, an assistant director in the role of transformational services, and I would hope that that particular position is going to be directly involved in this, particularly as our IT cyber issues under them. I don't think we as a committee can divorce what we are looking at and concerned about from the way the organisation has been set up to deal with transformation.
I'm not sure if I fully understand the question. I
Well,
think
specifically,
transformation
we
in
have
this
a role
process.
for a particular, it's Andrew Mowbray.
Mhm.
He was appointed specifically for transformational services, and he has responsibility for HR, IT and various things. You mentioned that we don't have quality assurance across a number of facets, but in particular across cyber fraud. And I would have thought that, our IT, the assistant director responsible for IT and transformation, would need to have a big part to play in the results of the peer review and the recommendations going forward, because that's how the holistic organisation works.
It will from an operational perspective, so the AD with responsibility for that area will take responsibility for the operational lead. The internal audit needs to be in a position to be able to independently audit that function. And at the moment, we need to have the skills to be able to audit that
I
function.
don't disagree with that at all. I just feel that there might be some expertise coming from that specialist area that we already have in terms of what Capital, for instance, our major contractor, might be able to tell us about how they relate to these sort of quality assurance issues for other councils. So it's all very well saying we'll get it, and I'm quite happy with Essex County Council acting as a peer review, but we have opportunity to look in other directions at the same
And
time.
that would be something that we would be approaching when we actually came to do the audit and perform the audit, and to outline that this is about actually being clear on what is the plan, what areas should we be looking at in an audit, should we have that on our audit list, what frequency should we be looking at these. So it's sort of taking it from a process level rather than an operational level. When we actually come to do an audit of any sort, we will generally go to the area themselves and specify the terms of reference for that audit, and they will be heavily involved in that and in determining that, and actually in part of that process.
I guess I'm thinking, Chairman, more strategically, because this is a strategic and tactical review. It's tactical because it's late and we're at risk, and it's strategic because it has to actually fit with the basis of our transformation. That's all I'm trying to say, is that we shouldn't just keep this within too narrow a channel. I would like to see it widened.
The peer review itself.
I think the peer review should be undertaken by the peer management, but I think that the results of that need to be shared, and wider input obtained into the recommendations that might be available.
Yeah,
That's fine.
yeah.
Sorry I didn't get to that quickly enough, because I was clearly feeling my way through it. I did have another question, Sharon, if I may.
Yeah, going back to that though, I think what's made us very cross, well, you and I are cross, is the fact that we have brought this up time and time again, and nobody's really taken any notice of us. You come along and you've now spotted what the problem is, and hopefully now they will take a bit of notice.
Well, I mean, we've raised it. We've raised it with the leadership team, and they endorsed this approach. Subject to audit committee approving that, and again we await the findings. But they are equally as concerned, I would say. So they recognise this as being an issue. And in terms of the fact that actually, because it's been flagged maybe in a slightly different way to what it has been in the past, in terms of why it's absolutely critical to have this appropriately resourced, and are willing to explore the options that come as a result of that.
Mm-hmm. You have
Yes, I do. There's a bullet point that comes out and jumps at me, and it concerns me a lot, bearing in mind what we're now embarking upon. There is no formal audit of the culture and ethics of the council. I think that's something I'd like to hear about, how that might be tackled. I don't see it quite as high on the priority as the previous item we discussed, but nevertheless it is important, because we've embarked on an investment board which is going to be heavily predicated and pivoted on the culture and ethics of the council. And I think that's something that needs to be looked at next quite quickly, because otherwise that board will be off and running quite swiftly and doing things, and there should be a framework around that audit should be able to assure the council upon. Not that I think the next would be, but it is appropriate to have that sort of framework.
Precisely. We've got to cover every risk, whether we think it's not that important or not.
Yeah.
But as an audit committee, we have to cover every risk that could happen. Yeah.
Chairman, I know I'm extending this point, but can we have some sort of timeline on this? Because what concerned me, we're talking about, within 3 months, 6 months, whatever. And Ms. Law said, well, hopefully, I believe, or I'm
Yeah,
hopeful.
hopefully. I mean,
that's at least a year after this was initially flagged up as a big concern. And effectively, we could be a year down the road if we don't have a set timeline. This has got to be done by so-and-so. If it just drifts again, it's going to be 12 months or 15 months, and if something did go wrong, the repercussions would be horrendous for the council.
Chairman, with regards to timeline, we can come back to the committee on that once Denise has spoken to her colleagues to get an idea when the peer review can take. We are asking for it to be done urgently, so once we get an idea of that, we can come back to
Are the
members.
committee happy if Denise comes back to Leslie and I before the next audit committee? Yes?
When is it? When, I mean, they could be the day before the next audit committee.
Well,
I-
if it is, then it would have to come in front of the audit committee.
You know, I
yeah.
mean,
So can I?
Well, I hope so, not.
I mean, we certainly have the concerns that you know, the whole
I mean,
committee...
we all got it,
we-
we've all
yeah.
registered
Yeah.
it, but here we are still going down the road of negotiating it or talking about it.
What do you think will be a reasonable period?
So if we're comfortable that I actually pull back from resources in the county to perform this work, I can contact them this week and come back to the committee in full and give you the outline of the date of when this can be completed.
Happy with that?
Not completely.
Oh,
Chair.
sorry.
Although I have no doubt of you two as chairman and vice chairman of the committee, I have sufficient concern and personal concern as a member of this committee to want to know, as soon as you know, what is being proposed. And I think we should all have the opportunity to put our hand up if we're not happy with it. And if it needed
So-
to have...
so
We
what
could
you're saying-
send an email out and,
Yeah.
and
Yeah,
get people to,
that's all we need.
to respond to that.
I thought you
Yeah.
were really talking about the timescale. You're actually talking about the result of the review, aren't you?
No,
No,
we're
talking
not
about
talking about the
timescale.
result. We're talking about if you're
I can
able
come
to
back
get...
to you this week
Yeah.
with a timescale, so I can go back and just confirm with colleagues when this can be undertaken, and obviously trying to get that to be done as expediently as possible. Come back to you to confirm the timescale that they can commit to, and then obviously what we were then discussing, my own aspirations that this can be all completed within the next month or two. Obviously we now have Christmas.
So would you
vacation
prefer
between,
the subcommittee
but we can have others.
to come back
Subcommittee.
before the next audit
I'm not
committee?
asking for that, Chair, and I'm just
Well,
asking
ca-
for when communication takes place to you two,
To share it.
that it's a
Share
copy,
it.
a copy
Email,
into
and if
the
anybody's got any
committee.
comments.
Share it to
Yeah.
every
And
member.
if there's
Yeah.
anything
Yeah.
really significant that comes up from members of the committee, then there should be another committee meeting. That's all.
Okay.
Yeah, that
Are we
makes
all
sense.
happy with that?
Yes.
Right.
I think it would be good to express our deep concern about it.
Well, we have done that.
Well, again,
Yeah.
with emphasis.
But you have to get somebody new in before anything's done about it, unfortunately.
Well, exactly.
Well, there's always agency, isn't there? So
Yeah.
we have to look at that.
Okay. So have we covered everything there? Right. The recommendation, it is proposed that the committee resolves that the outcome of the 2015 review of the public sector internal audit standards be agreed.
We can,
No,
because
we
because
can't agree.
earlier on they've highlighted, say they don't comply with
That's
it.
right. And that the renewal of the audit charter as amended for 2015-16 be agreed.
Well, we understand.
What happens if we don't agree?
I don't know what does happen if we don't agree. Maybe we can...
The recommendation doesn't seem to fit with the circumstances.
No.
Precisely, no. So can we come to you on that?
Sorry, just confirming that actually the recommendation should be to note rather than to agree.
Yes.
I think perhaps to amend it to add, but to express our concern.
Yeah.
So it's on record.
So that, okay.
So they're both to be noted, not agreed.
Yes, we noted. Yeah. Okay. All happy with that?
Chairman, I'm not sure.
Well, I know, but you know,
Content for the moment, so I think it's...
I think we've covered it as far as we possibly can, and we've really got to wait and see what happens. Okay.
Chairman, I think we should just through you and through Sonia that a note should be made that you fully endorse us taking up the peer review.
Sorry, I can't.
That you endorse and for us to carry out the peer review, and that we will come back to you with the results as a committee via email, and then obviously if there's anything that you are not happy with, then a possibility of a further committee to be called before the March committee.
Yeah.
I think that should be. I'm not sure whether that should be noted by.
I've noted it in the minute.
Yeah. Yeah. You're happy with that, Chairman?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right, item 9.
Okay.
James again, yes?
Yeah, so, yes. This item is to advise members of the progress of the annual audit plan and to seek approval of a revision to reflect the available resources. Any issues, please?
Yeah, see we're cutting down the days again from 319 to 302. Any other comments on item 9?
Chairman, I mean, surely this hangs on to what we've just discussed.
Mm-hmm. It does.
We're being given a choice of basically some proposed changes because it doesn't appear that we can do
We haven't got the staff to
do it.
That's right.
And that doesn't seem to be the right way we should be doing this somehow. If we're not happy with what we've already set out another plan or where we're going to go with peer reviews and something. So why are we agreeing to the proposed changes which we've already said we don't like?
May I suggest, Chairman, that instead of reading that progress on the annual audit can be agreed, that we substitute the word approved, noted rather, or agreed.
But the progress on the annual audit plan be noted.
Are you saying noted subject to review?
You can, yeah, by all means.
Yeah.
Only because, as a swearing pointed out, we're waiting to hear what we can do about it.
Yeah.
So I think
I don't think we're in a position actually to approve anything, are we?
But I don't think we can change this plan for 2015-16. I think we can only, with the peer review, that will be looking at next year's. I think is that
That's correct.
is that correct? Or?
Yes, what I was going to suggest in terms of this plan, this is a plan that's already currently in flight and many of these audits are actually work in progress. The rationale for the reduction was really as a result of the resources that were available in quarter 1 of the year rather than currently available, where we didn't have a backfill resource in place. That backfill for maternity cover, that backfill resource is now in place, but it's a recognition that in losing that time earlier in the year, that we've had to refine some of the timelines in this. So we've actually looked in a lot of detail at the proposed plan. We had some contingency days, which are days that are held in reserve. Those days have actually been utilised now into the plan, but it's a review of where we are at this point in time and how many days we think are required to complete the work that's in place. Many of the audits that are actually proposed are really around systems and processes and all of the critical ones that we must do. The review has indicated that we can still complete those within this financial year. Part of the peer review is actually looking at our systems and processes and actually looking at what we've completed for this year, what are the critical reviews and audits that need to be in place for the next financial year rather than
Does that make sense?
Can I?
Sorry, couldn't see.
Under 3.6, I've got the diagram there, the target figures there. Is there any additional information that you might have to see how you might be progressing going forward?
I've got the figures as at last Friday. The actual figure is 61.87% against a target of 65. So again, we continue to bring that gap down.
Do you think that by the end of the year, how close to the target figure you're likely to feel that you're going to be?
As it stands at the moment, if we keep the progression going, we should be more or less on target by the end of December, and then hopefully keep it going on to that basis.
That needs noting, Chairman. Specifically in the minutes, I may say. Because that puts a different perspective on what's here.
Okay. So how do we want the recommendation then? The progress on the annual audit plan be agreed and that the revised annual audit plan for 2015-16 be approved.
I would say noting the further information that was provided during the meeting.
Just not.
All agreed?
Can I just make one comment? Contingency reserve, we had 20 days and we've used 14. We've still got another 6. Do we need to keep that other 6 in reserve?
You never know what will crop up.
That's why it's called contingency.
To be thinking about it, I mean, the review, for example, that Denise is proposing, someone's going to have to sit with that. So that may take some of the contingency time in that proposed process.
I mean, an example of that was the DVLA audit. The DVLA audit came out of the blue, and that took 3 days. So you don't know what will crop up.
I would like some comments to be made on these minutes though, because for instance, risk management controls, we allocated 10 days, we've only used 3, so it's 7 less. You know, there's 3 less on payrolls, 7 less on national food.
The payrolls actually came in under budget, so that's a +1. So.
All right, I'll accept that one. I don't like the others. I would like it noted about these days, because I believe we've gone from over 400 last year, now down to 302 this year, and I would like it noted. And I believe we're probably all in agreement that yes, we've got no choice, that this is the latest audit plan. We've got to have this audit plan, but I would personally, and I think we're all in agreement, like it noted, that 302 days down from 400 last year is not satisfactory, and the audit committee are not happy with that.
It's worthwhile me just sort of stating that in terms of for me, it's not the number of days, it's how those days are used, and those are used in the appropriate way. So, for example, we could have an audit where there's an area that's been given very good assurance year after year, and actually there may not always be a need to do a detailed audit. A self-assessment may be sufficient. It may be better utilising those resources in other areas that may not actually even be appearing on this schedule.
Yeah.
So it's really about being really clear that the audits that we do are effective, that we're actually auditing the right areas, and we're really clear about where the risks are. Again, also just in terms of where we see a variation, where a variation occurs when an audit's been completed, that could be a good thing, because it means that the audit has been completed, it's possibly been completed in less time, etc. It's more a concern, so if an audit hasn't been completed and there is a reduction, we just need to be clear that that is still sufficient to do a full and comprehensive audit of that area, and that's why we still need the contingencies in reserve, because clearly that might mean that there are more days that are going to be required.
And of course the peer review will help us for next year with allocating the correct amount of days that we will need to review the areas that need reviewing.
Or being clear that are there any areas that should be on here that aren't, and any other things that they think that we should be paying some specific attention to, and then we can have a look at what does that mean for us, what resources would we need to allocate to that, because they're doing it from an external position, so they may not always fully understand our own internal processes, etc., and our own internal systems, so we need to sort of indicate whether there's a rationale for that not being there, what's been done in the past, etc. as well, and sort of do that, you know,
Yeah.
a sort of
I
two-pronged
understand your
approach.
explanation, but I'm still concerned. I know
That's the number of days.
440 days to 302, and I appreciate we may be very, very efficient or whatever, completing these, but it's still quite a significant amount of time
Yes.
reduced from our audit.
Chairman, that again is a very appropriate thing to minute. It's to minute the fact and also to minute the explanation given by
Yeah.
our 151 officer, because that makes great sense.
Yes.
It also shows in the minute that we as a committee and as an officer group have considered the issues that were presented to us. Otherwise, it just looks like a tick box.
Yes.
And I think too many times maybe this committee has appeared to do that. We're now getting down to the nitty gritty.
Well said.
Can I add in there, Chairman, that we've gone, it's substantial, and I fully accept what Denise has said, but we've gone from 400 and whatever it was down to 302, of no reason, because of staff and everything else. But it took us 402 days when we had more staff. Now, while I fully accept your explanation, did we have too many staff? Why was the need to have more people taking 402 days, and now suddenly we can do it on a wing and a prayer in 300 and odd days? Now, when we had in previous years, I wasn't on the audit last year, but I was in the year before that. In previous years, we had comprehensive reports and all the rest of the bits and pieces, and even then there was the odd isolated concern about the levels of audit. It was all done and covered, but like Leslie says, we do have concerns. We keep highlighting this, and regrettably, it's dragged on for too long already. And I fully accept Denise's explanation, but it actually highlights the fact that we had more people and took a lot longer, and now suddenly we can be very efficient and highlight specific areas. Well, why didn't we do that 2 years ago?
Difficult one to answer that one. We have always done an end-to-end process on the audits we do. We've more or less developed a way of ensuring that the external auditors can rely fully on our work. You may recall that when the audit plan was submitted in June this year, I suggested that we were to keep things as they were for this year, with a review to sort of see once the redesign's bedded down, we have new external auditors coming in, we may have a different way of approaching things, and that was always the plan. This year was from an audit viewpoint, was really sort of to have a little bit of continuity between the old regime and the new regime and make sure we cover the key areas.
That's true. Yeah.
Chairman.
Just on the back of we mentioned the new auditors coming in, are you expecting them to have a slightly different approach, or are they going to do things in a different way?
I believe they're a lot more computer based, so they'll be taking stuff more out of our systems and building their samples on that basis.
But I would anticipate that with the new external auditors that there will be a new approach. They won't place as much reliance initially on the work carried out by our internal auditors. They will want to do their own walkthrough of the systems. I've already met with Ernst & Young and also actually worked with Ernst & Young in audit at the county, and they do have a very different approach to what I've noted with BDO. I've had preliminary meeting with them, and I'm meeting with them again next week to actually start the review of our own internal processes, of which they'll then start to think about which areas they want to start to focus on.
Okay.
Chairman, we were talking about the recommendation. I think
I
suggested noted subject to review, and I still think, from what I've heard, that's still appropriate, because the peer review is going to have an impact upon the audit plan going forward.
Well, I think we did agree that instead of audit plan be agreed, be noted.
Yes, and
That's
subject to review, I proffered.
And subject to review.
Yeah.
All happy with that?
Yes.
Okay.
You read that through back to us, Simon, please.
The progress on the annual audit plan be noted and the revised annual audit plan for 2015-16 is subject to review. Be noted subject to review, I presume is what you want.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
So you're all happy with that?
Yeah.
Yeah? That will be agreed.
So that's subject to review in both places, yeah?
It
My
says-
concern is if we have it subject to review, does that mean we've got to have a review date and we've got to review it again? Because the peer review is surely looking at next year's audit.
Peer review will ideally be looking at systems, processes and
Yeah.
policies audits. The external auditors will also be looking at the internal audit plan as part of their work and actually deciding which areas they want to do a walkthrough of.
2016-17,
No,
not
for
what we're
current
talking
year,
about.
15-16.
Yeah.
15-16.
Yeah.
So Ernest & Young, when they arrive, they're going to be looking at the audit for 15-16 and they will look at this audit plan to
Oh,
see whether
okay.
this is sufficient and which of these areas they actually want to do a walkthrough of for their processes and whether there are any areas where they feel there are omissions that will mean that they will have to then do a more comprehensive piece of work.
So it is subject to review.
So it could end up more than 302 days at the
Yes,
Yes.
is what I'm trying to say.
But those days may be provided by Ernest & Young, so they will then decide
It's
how we...
open-ended, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is,
Yeah.
for the external auditors, yes. Mm.
Yeah.
So I think that's what we've agreed. Yeah. Okay. So I don't think we've got any strangers here today, have we? So sorry.
I'm feeling pretty strange. at the moment.
So we'll go on to item 12.
Chairman, 10.
Oh, hang on, we haven't done 10, have we? Sorry, I'm jumping the gun.
I'm not going to pack up one of my favourite ones.
Right, so this is Terry Harper.
Yes, hello, good evening everybody. I thought I'd take just a few minutes to introduce this before we go through it because I think it's quite a large subject. And firstly, the apology that it wasn't given to the September meeting. That's the result of all the constraints of our restructuring and so on. It required a fundamental review and we just weren't in a position to present it for the September meeting. What I'd like to do, if I can, is direct you initially to the diagram at Appendix A3 of the report, which is the one that looks like this. Page 1017.
Is that the one with the coloured marking on?
No, it's the...
It's
It's
on the
coloured, yes.
iPad.
It's coloured on the iPad.
Okay.
10-17.
That is the one with the colour.
It's one of two we coloured.
Yeah.
Not on the paper.
Right. Essentially, what I've tried to display here is the tiered nature of our whole risk management arrangements at Rochford. So if I can sort of take you just through this, at the very top of the diagram, effectively we have a policy. That policy is one that I'm going to ask you to approve tonight, and you've had the policy documents given to you. Below that, we have a framework of the arrangements that we use for managing risk. That details the responsibilities of the various people involved and also gives you some guidelines and templates that we use for assessing risk, the risk scoring systems that we use and so on. And that indeed as well is something that I'd seek your approval of tonight. And then finally, in terms of the documents you've been presented, there is the corporate risk register. This is a tabular summary of the key risks that the council is facing at the present time. It is divided into what I call outcome risks, so things that could go wrong in terms of the way we are seeking to achieve things for our community, and what I call enabling risks, which are, if you like, the underlying things that we could get wrong which would inhibit what we do and how we deliver. So that's the way it's been structured. Referring to the diagram though, the picture that I sort of started with, underpinning all of this are a number of other pieces of information. The corporate risk register, each of those risks that's on there, there's a further analysis available if anyone wants to delve further into any of those items. They're available on request, called a corporate risk analysis. So for each of the key risks, we've done an analysis piece of work. Moving across the diagram, next to that, I've quoted a thing called operational risk registers. This corporate risk register is giving you the key risk, the top level risk that the council is facing. If you think about the day-to-day operations of the council and each of the assistant directors' areas, there are of course day-to-day things that need to be assessed, risk assessed as well. So that area of work is managed by the assistant directors, and they have appointed people who we call operational risk coordinators. Their job is to liaise with me, and they produce their own local risk registers, if you like, for day-to-day operational matters. And then finally, if you look at our business plan, which you've approved in the last few months as a council, that will give rise to project delivery plans that will seek to undertake or to ensure that we deliver the various projects. Within those project plans, there will also be risk logs and risk analyses for those specific projects as those plans are developed. So that's the kind of overall scenario, if you like, of the risk management structure that the council has. And then linking all of that together in a much broader way is that the whole emergency planning and business continuity work that's done by our emergency planning officer also has to link into this. So that at the sort of operational level, things that are being looked at on the risk register will also be reflected in the business continuity plans that are being produced for a particular area. So that when we talk about having a control in place to see that we deliver against the risk, that should be featured, for example, in the emergency planning for that area as well. So that's the kind of whole scenario, if you like, for all of this. To come back to what you're being asked to look at tonight, essentially it's the policy statement, the framework which defines who does what, the sort of systems and so on we have in place to score risk, and then the risk register itself at the corporate level. So those are the three items that you're being asked to look at tonight and approve, and I'm happy to go through those and take any questions on specific points in those documents. So over to the floor chairman to pick up any questions.
Sure. Sorry.
John can go first.
No.
I'm probably going to ask the same question.
Let's put it all done.
Go on then.
Okay, there's something I just couldn't bottom out, because I got down to the last few pages where we were looking at specific areas, and we were looking at the column that said quality of control.
Right.
And I noticed that there was a fair
Can you tell us
smattering
what
of
page you're
fares.
on there?
Sorry?
Can you tell us what page?
Yeah, like 1020 and anything on from there, if you like.
Okay.
There's a column which says quality of controls. There's a fair smattering of fares, and there's some goods. And I couldn't really find out, and because I probably didn't look as far as I should, and I think it's going to help me tell, is what's the difference between fair and good? And then I'm going to probably say to you, so why is this only fair?
Right.
So be aware of where I'm coming from.
Okay, perhaps I'll go back a step further from that and say that if you look at the last four columns on the risk register, you've got 4 items there. We look at the quality of the controls we have in place, like the things we're trying to mitigate the risk with. We have a view on the likelihood of the risk, how likely is it going to be to occur, and then obviously what will be the impact of that risk if it does occur. And those then give rise to us taking a view as to whether the risk is medium, high or low. So the risk rating, medium, high or low, is derived essentially from the likelihood and impact of the risk. The quality of controls impact on the likelihood and impact, effectively. If you've got poor quality controls, then the likelihood of a risk occurring is higher, essentially. And so when you've got an issue with the quality of the controls, you've necessarily got probably a higher likelihood in that column than it would have been if you had a better control in place. The impact less likely to change, but sometimes you can alleviate impact as well. You can probably make the impact less severe in some cases with a good control. And that in turn then may lower the risk rating. So if we had good controls across the piece, we might find that some of these drop back to low in terms of a risk. The position we're in at the moment, essentially, and I think it's a comment we've made already tonight, is that we've been through a major change in the organisation of the council. We are continuing to go through a major change in terms of developing new ways of doing things. And necessarily, therefore, there are a number of areas where the controls we've had in the past are probably not in place in as much as they used to be in some cases. And so we are in a situation, and I'm trying to do this as a very fair and honest assessment of where we are. In the past, we would have had far more good rated controls on this list and fewer fair, and indeed there's a couple of poor, and I don't think we've had poor on the list in the past. Now, essentially, when you look at what does that mean, if something is poor, it means it's not really helping to control the risk at the moment. Either the controls are there but they're not happening, or the controls you put in place aren't sufficient. If you look at fair, then you're saying, well, there is some mitigation of risk going on, but it's not adequate. Then you get to good, where things are basically okay, and excellent, of course, is you've really got a handle on things and you're in touch with everything. So that's kind of the scenario we are in. Specific risks, obviously the specific explanations.
Can I come back on that, Chairman?
Sure.
Thank you. So, I mean, I'm looking at one straight away, number one. I'm thinking, I know of some principal controls already that are going to improve that quite a lot, but it's not noted there. And then I'm thinking about, I'm not going to introduce that in particular, it's to do with the investment board, and I know what controls are being put around that in particular, to achieve better control of the business plan delivery. But having said that, I suppose what I'm interested in is, I'm looking at safeguarding and I'm worrying, because that's only fair, because that's one of the biggest risks to this council, in my opinion. Well, that's my view anyway. So I guess what I'm actually saying is, what's the programme to improve these principal controls from fair to at least good, and from poor to at least good? Right. Have we got a programme? So you're asking us to approve a policy, which is all fine and dandy, but when it then in terms of analysis gives me a result I don't like, what are you going to do to make it, to improve it?
Yeah. Again, if I come back to the more detailed analysis that's available on each of these.
So I don't have that,
which you don't have.
Oh, okay. That's good.
Essentially, there's another 13 times 4 sheets of paper to read it. I really want to go through them all. But essentially, these give areas like further action required. And so here we have, for example, key programmes of work to be defined, plans identify key priorities for service delivery. Those are the things that are currently being developed within the leadership team at the moment. It's something that is really sort of germane to what they're doing right now. If you look at safeguarding, the sort of things that the lead officer there has said is that he wants to do more training among staff, because there has been training. There is a feeling that we now need to refresh that training, because most of us aren't going to get involved in safeguarding issues most of the time. So there is a need to just keep it on people's agendas to make sure that we are all aware of the things we should be doing. A process chart was issued probably about 3 months ago. I suspect that everybody's looked at it and now filed it, because it's not something they're dealing with on a day-to-day basis. So we need to keep these things in the forefront of people's minds. So there will be some sort of a refresher training approach being organised for that. We need to undertake certain audits. Now, I don't know when the last one was done at the moment, but there is a Section 11 Children's Act audit required, and that has to be done on a regular basis, so we need to make sure that those things are happening. So in each of these risks, there is a kind of underpinning analysis that says, and this is the action we either need to take or are taking, and those are the things that we bring back to the leadership team for them to move on.
Jen, I'm sorry to hold the show on that, but it naturally it falls to me to say I think we should all have seen that because I think that's part of what we should be doing. I don't feel terribly comfortable acknowledging this current results outcome or analysis outcome without knowing what we're doing to improve it, which I know there's evidence.
So, Denise.
Elizabeth Bromley, just responding, Councillor Mason. So a number of these areas will be as a result of public service transformation. So we'd expect to see something like the business plan out there. It's something very new. It's transformation of a service, and you'd actually need to monitor the process. Safeguarding will always factor on any risk register, and I expect it to see it there. What we can do is bring to you the action points, the detail actions, based on which of these you believe you want to see. This is the latest redraft of the report. I think it's for yourselves to say which of these you are particularly concerned about and want to have more of a drill down into, and we can bring those and share those details with you. But recognise that some of them, what we want to see is the trajectory and the process and those principles being embedded. So where Terry mentioned the approach in safeguarding needs for training, actually it needs to be what we live and breathe every day. It needs to be what we do. And those principles need to just be continually refreshed, and actually for us not to lose sight of that. So again, there are some actions that are in place to actually start to do that, but that area will be one that you will always see on the risk register. And what we want to see is that progress from fair to good in terms of the quality controls that we have in place. And what we can share with you is the action plans for that and any of the other areas that you feel will be of interest to yourself for a further drill down. But rather than bringing everything to you at this meeting, it's for yourself to really just advise which of those you'd want to do more an in-depth review of.
Chairman, if I may, just to alleviate some councillors' Mason's concerns around safeguarding, the DBS checks and recruitment processes, that has been done, I know, because I had to go through that process myself when I was appointed. The Children's Acts audit, that has been done. I know, because I sent a chaser email. Yeah, no, I know that, because that has been done. I don't know the results of that, but I know that because the outgoing assistant director at the time had sent out chaser, so she ensured that was done. Not forgetting that you now have an appointed safeguarding officer in post, which we previously didn't have. So there are those issues are being addressed. So just to alleviate some of your concerns, and also with the outgoing assistant director of it was under community services previously, but now we have left it. That was passed on to Mr. Houghton, Marcus Houghton, to look after in the interim until we get the new appointment of the. So we haven't just, as assistant directors, we haven't ignored the safeguarding side. So if we can, yeah, just no, I'm not suggesting, but I'm just saying, just to alleviate any concerns around safeguarding for members, that is top of our priority list, and it's drilled into us at the moment.
Chairman, that was certainly not
the
direction of my travel.
No, I understand, but I just wanted to. Yeah.
My travel is towards our accountability, our responsibility as members on this committee, because we are the ones who have been appointed by council to do this, and I just felt that I'd want to go much further than this to have that assurance, so that I can honestly walk away from an audit committee and say, yeah, I've looked at this and I'm reasonably assured. I might even want to add to it, but I'm assured, and also the other members would contribute to it, that we do have that plan, that action plan approved. Warts and all, where we are, we know where we've got to go.
Yeah. There are quite a few of these actually that concerned us.
Sorry, Chair.
Didn't they concern you as well?
Thank you, Chair. I'm sorry to have taken so much time.
No.
Sorry, Chairman.
Sorry.
Yeah, so one of the ones that sort of like seemed to stand out to me was the with regard to food and health and safety.
Oh, that was one I was just about to bring up.
In relation to the fact that it mentioned that one of the potential risks is sort of fatality or sort of life-threatening sort of like, so obviously that should be a major concern. The fact that it's poor is obviously a bigger concern. Is it one that's always going to be an area that's going to be difficult to score high?
No.
or is there the fact that we haven't got sufficient controls in that area at the moment?
The current situation is that we have resource shortage. We have one food safety inspector in post at the moment. We have just taken on a second contractor, I believe, in order to deal with a backlog of food safety inspections that has built up. That is why it is listed as poor at the moment. It's reflecting the nature of the situation right now. The plan is to have, I think the contractor has started now, because I've seen their name come past me the other day. So they are attacking the backlog with effect from now. They will need to work flat out for the rest of this year to achieve the inspection plan.
I know from previous work experience, when I used to work for my family business, about we used to sell cleaning products, and we knew when the inspectors were going around, because suddenly these people would start coming in with a sheet of paper telling them what they need to do to get their premises up to scratch. And so from experience, I know that a good inspection regime helps to keep the level of food safety in the area
I mean, it's
to a
important,
high standard.
and if you get it wrong, then there can be serious consequences. Luckily, so far, we haven't had any serious consequences, but it's something that we do need to address.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Yes, regarding the food safety issue, I think towards the start of the year, there were one premises in the district with a rating of 0 out of 5. There's currently 11, which is still only a very small percentage of the total number of premises, but that 11 is equal to the total number for Southend, Castle Point and Basildon put together. So I'm slightly reassured that we've got contractors in to deal with the backlog. I would assume the reasons that the numbers gone up makes at least partly because premises aren't being re-inspected. Some of the 0 ratings have been around for quite a while.
Chairman, just on that issue, as you know, again with the outgoing assistant director who held that, we've had difficulties with that post, and but however we did have 2 food safety officers, but it must be noted that one of the food safety officers had left prior to the restructure, and I believe we did have another contractor in after that to help draw down the numbers, and then through various factors our only remaining food and safety inspector broke his foot, so he couldn't go out on site. So there was various factors, but they are all being addressed at the moment. As you know, we have now got a new contractor in. That should quite quickly draw down the backlog. Our other food safety inspectors back on to full health standards, I hope, subject to touch wood, nothing else. But given the fact that we've had this difficult bedding in period and lack of resources, I think we've been quite we've done quite well with regards to our as well as we can do on our food safety inspections, and touch wood there hasn't been any serious cases out there. Yeah, touch wood. There's not been any safety serious, and I'm hopeful we're all back on track now with regards to food safety, and of course we are in the middle of recruiting a new assistant director in that role who should bring a whole new perspective to it as well.
Well, as Leslie was saying earlier, actually, we do rely on our restaurants and bars in the Rochford area. So it is an essential part that we make sure that food safety is at the top of the...
Absolutely.
David?
Thank you. I'm not quite sure if you'll be aware yet, Edward, but I thought John he touched on it about the investment board last evening. How do you feel that you'll be involved with this situation? I mean, we only had the meeting last evening. I mean, I'm not on the board, but listening to it, and it's going to be very much a suck it and see scenario at times. How do you feel that?
I mean, I would go back to probably Nick Khan, who's the lead director with responsibility for the business plan, and effectively say, how do you feel these new controls are going to represent control, and then pick up on the fact that we can add that in as a control and action, and we can evaluate it. But
Do you want me to help you? I'll help you because one of the proposals which we discussed last night was to ensure that there is a project office. And a project office is a professional office that takes responsibility for independently, not auditing, but independently reviewing and ensuring that all projects are to time, have the resources, and to a certain extent are meeting budget controls. And that will be two offices. It might even end up 3 offices with the size of the programme that we've got in mind. So, you could add that to the principal controls. And if you read the paper I supplied to Amar and the directors from Cranwell, then you'd be reasonably assured that we've looked at the very best of practice in putting that in place. And although we're not going to, use every bell and whistle in the project office on day one, I think it will inevitably progress. So that helps Councillor Swearing as well.
Yeah, it's just a question, how's it all going to gel together?
Well, that's the control perspective, as well as, of course, fairly obviously, the investment board itself will receive reports from the project office, and of course our officers and principal officers who are running the projects anyway.
As long as it won't contradict or won't be in any way a variation on what the council's policies already are.
Well, that in itself is why I raised the issue of ethics and culture. Sorry, Chairman. I raised ethics and culture and how that was going to be audited, because clearly we set a new culture last night for that particular part of the council's work, and yes, that does need to be looked at and assurance is given around. And I'm looking forward to that happening.
Is it worthwhile me just sort of adding to that? And I think that's exactly the point that I was going to make in terms of generally within investment board you expect to see a PMO, which is a project management office, to support the functions and do some of the quality assurance, but you'd also anticipate that each of the propositions come with a fully costed business proposition, but has also had appropriate due diligence done prior to it actually coming to the investment board, and within that should actually also be a risk section which outlines the risk into which we would be potentially exposed. Once the propositions are approved or endorsed, you'd expect to see proper project management principles with risk management schedules to support each of these as they go forward. So I think they should then supplement these, and you'll probably see that working fully in practice.
And to add to that, we've got our meeting with Carl tomorrow to discuss the role of the programme office, if you decided to call it.
Oh, that's even better.
So,
I'm happy with that too.
and I suspect that you mentioned 2 officers and a third. I may well be a third involved in that.
Oh, congratulations. That's good.
Okay. Any more questions on item 10?
I don't know, I can't remember what the recommendation is, Chairman.
Right, the recommendation. It is
We might need
proposed,
to do something about that one.
it is proposed that the committee resolves that the updated corporate risk management policy and framework and the corporate risk register 2015-16 be approved.
I don't want to approve.
I knew you were.
Well, that's why I said it. I did indicate that
Yeah.
but my memory wasn't complete. But I don't want to approve that corporate risk register because I think it requires us to look at the actions that are being taken to be able
Well,
to do so.
obviously you've discussed something else coming into place here, haven't you?
Well, that's by the by. I'm also talking about the other ones that other members raised, which is about obviously vulnerable children, vulnerable people, and food, and all the others. I don't think, from my own responsibility and accountability, want to dissect it and say I want to look at particular ones. I'd like to see that wonderful paper that's sitting there before I approve the corporate risk register. Happy to approve the policy.
Do we need to approve it, Chairman?
Sorry?
Do we need, is it necessary or required that this committee approves?
Well, you don't have to approve it, but
Why we just
what are we going to recommend?
The Chairman, I think
Just note it.
I'd be happy to approve the policy, the framework, but I'm not prepared to approve the outcome because I'm not satisfied with the outcome.
So instead of being approved then, to be noted again? Yeah?
Well, I want to go further.
But
to be
don't we want
perfectly
to-
honest
I
with
think
you.
the risk
Management
management
policy
policy and
framework.
framework to be approved.
Yeah.
Sorry, say that again?
I'm sensing that it's appropriate for the committee to approve the corporate risk management policy and framework, but the corporate
Yeah,
risk
yeah,
register is
yeah.
the
It's
different.
noted until
Yeah.
such time as the action plan is brought forward.
Right, so the updated, excuse me, corporate risk management policy and framework be approved, and the corporate risk register for 2015-16 be noted.
Yes. Yes.
Subject to the action plan being brought forward.
Well, we just noted at this stage.
Just noted.
Do we?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what
Don't we
we
want
said,
to? Don't
is
we want to
noted.
put a requirement that the action plan is given to us at the next meeting?
Well, we're only noting it, so we're not giving anyone a green light.
How long to the next meeting? Sorry, I'm thinking about.
Normally 3 months, isn't it?
It's too long for
It's
me.
March
March,
the
is it? Yeah.
Was there something at last night's meeting that the
Oh,
corporate
not
risk
even
register
around.
was under review or under change or evolving anyway? Or
Oh, sorry, Denise.
That's true.
The corporate risk register will be evolving, it will change every time you see it. It's an evolving live document, so it will actually always be to note, but it's for the committee to identify any areas where they wish to have a more in-depth review of the actual details or the action plans.
In that case, Chairman, I'd like to look at all of the ones that are fair and poor. Again, in particular, the action plans.
Okay.
That's realistic.
Shall we start then with the corporate risk register?
I don't know why you should do it.
Sorry, what?
Chairman, I think we've just agreed that we're going to look at the action plans for anything that's rated poor and fair on the corporate risk
Yeah.
register.
Yeah. So we're going on to item 11 as well.
Yeah, but we haven't agreed this one yet.
Yeah, no.
We've agreed the policy and the
We
framework.
have.
We've approved that.
We have.
We've noted the corporate risk register for
We've
2015-16.
done.
Yeah,
But wish to see the action plans for those that are recorded under quality of controls, fair and poor.
So we've agreed that.
Yeah.
Item 10. So we know when we
so we have agreed that.
We've agreed that, yeah.
Okay. Sorry, I'm getting confused as well.
But it is amazingly complicated. Don't leave it at all. That's not a criticism, it's just the way it is and it's been like it for a long time.
Okay.
And it's evolved all the time.
Right, now we'll go on to what I jumped before, and that's exclusion of the press and public, but we haven't got anybody that needs to be excluded. So